So before we start, I have to share a little story that I've been given permission to tell. This morning, we have the Advent wreath that's set up, and Kate came in this morning, and she walked over to it, and she said, actually, I don't think you said anything. And I said, well, you light the first candle. And she goes, that's right. I said, it's Advent. She goes, are you sure? Right? And then she says, I have to wake up. I thought it was good. So she said I could tell you all of that. But it was great. It was wonderful. So today is the first Sunday of Advent. It not only signals the beginning of a new year for the church, but it also begins us finding ourselves in the Gospel of Mark. And Mark is the shortest gospel. There's only 14 chapters, and he's concise. He does not waste any time when he talks about what's going on with Christ. He very quickly talks about John the Baptist, then Jesus' birth, and it's like bam, 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 and you know what's going on, what is happening. And he's always saying, keep watch. And even Isaiah this morning, keep watch. Watch closely. Be aware. Something has happened in the world, Mark is telling us. Something that is big. God has come. And as we all know, the Advent also signals the beginning of the Christmas season, which didn't start in September or in October during Halloween, as advertisers and grocery stores would have us to believe. And most people associate Christmas with specific sights and sounds. Some may envision a favorite ornament to hang on a tree, while others think of a cherished toy always displayed this time of year. The smell of cookies baking can conjure up cherished memories of hot chocolate and cookies after a sled ride, or being outside in the cold for a long time, picking out a tree. Whatever the specifics, most of the images of Christmas that fill our minds involve rich colors, fine fabrics, sparkling trees, stars, favorite foods, glittering ornaments, and beautiful lights. Then there's the other side of Christmas, a different view of Christmas. Almost what Mark is talking about, the dark side. Not always easy to get through. For some people, Christmas isn't joy-filled. It's dull, it's sparse, rugged rather than polished, dark rather than light, futile rather than festive. If you've experienced the loss of someone that you've loved and cherished, then it's apt not to be so joy-filled. And then I always raise the question, can the truth of Christmas be experienced devoid of any festive symbols of the season? What kind of preparation must be made? What kind of decorations must be displayed in order for Jesus to enter our lives? Especially because Mark and Isaiah tells us Jesus is here now, already here. And that's the mystery, and that's the paradox. Jesus came, is present, and is coming again. From Mark's perspective, the coming of Christ is much more about disorder than any order in the world. And it's also because during the time of Mark, the temple in Jerusalem had been destroyed, and the people of Jerusalem were raised up against the Romans. So it was very chaotic. And Christians were being killed. So he writes this to give hope and to remind people. Eugene Peterson, in his translation of the Bible in the Message, says, if anyone tries to flag you down, oh, and I have to say, this comes before the verses we read this morning, which I cannot leave out. If anyone tries to flag you down, calling out, here's the Messiah, or points, there he is, don't fall for it. Fake messiahs and lying preachers are going to pop up everywhere. Their impressive credentials and dazzling performances will pull the wool over the eyes of even those who ought to know better. So watch out, because I've given you fair warning following those hard times. The sun will fade out. The moon will cloud over. Stars fall out of the sky. Cosmic powers tremble. And then you'll see me. Keep watch. Stay awake. Jesus tells a parable of the fig tree that will bud, and that will be another sign that he is coming. Sky and earth will wear out. My words won't wear out. Aren't all of these things happening now and have been happening for ages and ages and ages? But pay attention. Don't get so caught up in the Christmas season that you forget to slow down and see what's going on around us. The chapter of Mark, at least the verses 24 to 37, are known as the Apocalypse, and that's by R.H. Lighthouse, who's a biblical scholar. And he says it's not so much about signs and timetables, it's more about not being caught off guard by people who claim that the world is ending because of the bad weather, the wars, etc. We've all been there. Jesus' words of caution about not being led astray by false teachers, not to be discouraged or put off by wars and insurrections and natural disasters and famines. They aren't meant to frighten us, but to encourage us to look for the one who's coming, the one who will bring hope in the midst of suffering. And I am not naive enough to know that those things do discourage us and do set us back at times. So must everything be perfect, beautiful, nice and tidy for Christ to come, to be born on Christmas Day? God helps us to see that that is the case. Or rather, God helps us see that if that is the case, in more ways than we'd like to admit, it often seems as though all hell is broken loose. All hell is broken loose in the world. The worst conditions may hold out the greatest promise of the nearness of the presence of God in our midst. And that is what Isaiah is telling us. Christ will come, and his coming won't be deterred by scenes of carnage and violence and war, hunger or famine. For thousands and thousands and thousands of years, chaos has marked the world. Christ came to give us hope, not to end the wars, but to help for us to live differently, to show a different way. And Jesus reminds us that God invades the ugliest situations in life as well as those we deem most glorious. And the imagery and language that Mark uses is a wake-up call. A wake-up call not to withdraw from the world, to be involved in it. That God's not silent, even though it may be hard to remember that, or even believe it, that God is out there. And it would be so easy to be indifferent to the needs of other people and the suffering in our world because we've become overwhelmed by the horrible events going on in our world. How easy it would be to be indifferent. Indifferent, not to care for anyone, one way or another. No hope, no faith in ourselves or one another. Indifference, which can be a pretty bad sin when you don't care. Keep watch and stay awake. Jesus is present in the world, God incarnate. Jesus' words are meant to remind us of expectations and possibilities that come when we uncover what is going on below the surface. And it can become so easy for us not to try to look or to try to run away. Advent is about preparing ourselves for something that we can't see, yet we know is coming. that we know is coming, but also, yes, it's still here. That Jesus does live. That Jesus tells us to keep alert. For you don't know. You don't know when the time will come. It's a call for us to look beyond the present state of the world, to look at the forest through the trees, to stop during the day, to say thank you, to look at what is around us, to give thanks for it, or to be upset about it and pray about it. There's more going on than we can imagine in our lives, and witness can bring hope and healing to not only ourselves, but to other people. And that's what Jesus is reminding me. Yes, the world is going to hell in a handbasket, and yet I'm here. Every year, at the beginning of Advent, I hear people say frantically, I have so much to get done that before Christmas, I don't think I'm going to make it. I'm not ready. Keep watch and stay awake. We will do well to listen to ourselves, even as we listen to Jesus' word. To say, oh my goodness, I can't manage it, everyone's coming to the house. Maybe is a moment to stop, take a breath, step back, and then go forward. And a subtle, though profoundly important misperception pervades the attitude reflected in our comments. And I do at times watch the Hallmark channel, and I've never seen Christmas more lavish and more beautiful. But it's not what Christmas is. As someone once wrote, and I think it was Barbara Brown Taylor, God's entrance into our lives occurs at God's initiative. Christ arrives in our midst not as a reward for detailed preparation, but as a result of divine compassion. God comes to us whether or not we have made ready for the divine presence. The success of Christmas is not contingent on how well we've decorated. God comes amid darkness and despair as readily as amid light and happiness. Christmas is an expression of God's grace. And this author closes with, God shows up, and I love this, in people's lives in response to the immense needs of humankind. It's there. God is there. And we're reminded during Advent that the revelation of Christ's arrival is due to God's incredible love for all people, whatever their life situations or conditions. And that's what Mark wants you to know. Jesus came. Jesus healed. Jesus died and rose again. And no matter what is happening in your life or in the world, Christ comes and is present, which is always amazing to me. Christmas will arrive. Maybe not in the way that all of us had planned, but Jesus arrives, and we celebrate that day. So keep watch, stay awake. And each Sunday we celebrate the Eucharist in remembrance and recognition that Christ is present with us and in us, and we need him to live fully. No matter what the signs or the circumstances, we're able to proclaim the mystery of faith. Christ has died, Christ has risen, and Christ will come again. I think that Advent is a wonderful time to remind us to slow down. Christ is here, Christ will come. Christmas will arrive. Maybe not the way we all wanted it to, but it will happen. And during this time, we're also apt to spend so much time worried about what we're going to buy, what we're going to prepare, that we forget to prepare ourselves inwardly. So I invite you to take time out during your busy day if you aren't already. 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Whatever time you need to stop. Take 3 deep breaths and remember that God is present with you. It'll be okay. Keep watch and stay awake. Savor all of your time now with God and your friends and your families and your neighbors. Because none of us knows when our lives will change. remember that God's words and God's love prevail. Amen.